So what's up, y'all? Today I'm going to be going over the trades that I took Monday, June 2nd, 2025 on NASDAQ futures. We're going to be going right into let's just start on a daily, right? Because I told you guys on my community tab that the two things that I was going to be looking for was the wicks, right? These two wicks right here. We had the wick on the daily right here. We had the wick over here as well. I pretty much knew that, we was going to be inside of this range. I wasn't really expecting us to break out of this range, and that was my reason for calling out those two wicks on a daily time frame. So I got a video about how I use wicks. Make sure y'all go check that video out. But pretty much what I like to do is I like to look at the wicks on like the daily, the weekly, 4-hour or the 1-hour time frame, and I like to measure those out and see how price tends to react off of those wicks, right? Make sure y'all paying attention to the wicks. But let's get into these trades that I took today on my prop firm account. I made about almost 1,100 on my I made about 1,100 on my FunderPro account, and I made about, I think it was like 1,200 or so on my Tradeify account, and I made about 260 on all of my Apex accounts. I just started my Apex accounts, right? So the first trade that I did, it was right here, right? This was my first trade. So this was the 9:30 open right here, this vertical line. I'll put a vertical line on that so y'all can know where the 9:30 opening is at. And then we had the first presented fair value gap. I just did a video about the first presented fair value gap. Make sure y'all go check that out. If you're not using the first presented fair value gap, which is just essentially ICT's Silver Bullet, his 2022 mentorship, then you're missing out. I'm just going to be honest with you. If you're not using the first presented fair value gap, I don't even know what you're doing at this point. So long story short, the market opened and then it instantly started to rally. We went up here. We had some liquidity up here that was at 434 area. We had liquidity to the left. Y'all can go on the chart and check that out in the different time frames if y'all want to. And then what I was looking for was to see, all right, are we going to just keep going up, or are we going to start to break down? So because we had a fair value gap right here, and then the market broke below it, this became an inversion fair value gap. So my first entry was right in here. It wasn't exactly in here, but it was about right here. I got in like at 415, 415, and then I was looking to get out at the bare minimum at the first presented fair value gap. I did want more. I wanted it to come all the way down here and start crashing down below, but the thing about the prop firm accounts, you guys, I try to be conservative, especially on a Monday. When the market give me about 60 or 70 points, I tend to take it. I don't try to get too greedy. I don't try to be too fancy. So that was my first trade. As you guys can see, it did continue to go down an extra 100 points. So I made about 1,300 on that trade. I probably would have made about, 2,600 or 3,000 on that trade if I had held, but I wasn't worried at all. And as you guys can also see, the first presented fair value gap gave you a chance to enter as well, right? Market broke below this first presented fair value gap, came back up to retest, and then it swept out liquidity. Now, after the market swept liquidity, this is when it got a little bit tricky for me because, I wasn't really paying attention to the obvious, right? The market comes down here, sweeps liquidity, and then it makes this fair value gap. This is a clear sign that the market is getting ready to reverse. And I was ignoring that a little bit. I didn't ignore it completely, but mostly, you guys, I'm gonna be honest, I favor selling more than buying. So that's like a weakness of mine. I'm trying to get out of that and be able to adapt quickly in the market. But to tell you the truth, I wasn't really looking to get into another trade anyways, because typically after I place a trade, if it's a winner or a loser, it don't really matter. But after I take a trade, I like to take a break when I close that trade. At least a 15-minute break to reassess the market and see what's really going on before I just get right back into the market, right? But I did see this reversal, and then also this little fair value gap right here. Once the market broke above that, it started to use this as an inversion fair value gap. Now, this is where I took my first loss, because like I said, I wasn't paying attention to I was paying attention, but I wasn't sticking to the rules. You know, I was still thinking about selling, right? Because what I had seen right here was these 3 green candles. As you guys know, ICT teaches this as one order block, right? So these 3 candles, what you would do is you would take your Fibonacci tool, you would measure the body of these candles, right? From the lowest body to the highest body. You would put it on there like that. So what I was looking at was, I'm like, okay, price came up in here, it touched the midpoint. Let me zoom in. Right, price came up here, it touched the midpoint of these 3 order blocks, and then it started to reject. So I was like, okay, that's a beautiful sign. But the only bad thing about it was we had these 2 red candles is an order block as well, right? So you can do the same thing with these 2 candles, measure out the bodies, right? And as you guys can see, price comes down here, hits the midpoint of this, and it started to reject. So at this point, I was a bit conflicted. And typically when you're conflicted as a trader, the best thing for you to do is just don't do anything. Don't take any trades. Wait for more of a confirmation. But I was a little bit too excited. I wanted to make some more profits. So I took the sell as it came up here and swept this high. I was taking this sell up in this area, and my stop loss was at about 370, right? Because if we go to the 5-minute time frame, I'll take y'all to the 5-minute time frame. Let's see, where are we? Gotta scroll to the right. So over here, there was a fair value gap right here, right, on the 5-minute time frame. So I'm gonna remove this, because what I was looking at the time was I had my Fibonacci from swing high all the way up here to swing low. And as you guys can see, this fair value gap is in discount. So I thought the market may wanted to leave this open and just keep powering to the downside. So I placed my stop loss at 370 up here, because I know if the market comes up here, I'm just wrong and I'm going to lose the trade, right? And that's exactly what happened. I ended up losing that trade. And that was, so at the time I was up about 1,300 on my FunderPro account, and then I took about a $900 loss on that trade idea. So, but I was still in profits, but I was a little bit disappointed in myself because I should have been a little bit more patient. And the market was clearly telling me that it was ready to reverse. And it happens to the best of us, right? You know, if you could have caught this trade on the first entry, you could have made a little scalp right there, but I didn't catch it on the first one. I was trying to catch it on the second and third. And as you guys can see over here, this is nothing but consolidation, right? So, and then the third idea I had for a entry was these 2 order blocks right here. Same thing, all right? If I box this up, if I box that up, you guys can see right here, the market comes up here. It touched the midpoint of this order block, had a rejection, and I was selling all through here. I sold like 3 different times. You guys can literally see my trade executions on my community tab. So every time I was selling, I was moving my stop loss to break even, because I just didn't trust it. Mainly I didn't trust it because we had a sweep of liquidity down here. We had the gap down here. Price looked like it was starting to, like, run up. But the idea I had was maybe I could sell here and just get out right here at the first presented fair value gap. But as you guys can see, it never came back into that first presented fair value gap. So I am going to be looking at that, Tuesday or Wednesday throughout the week, because this is going to be liquidity. So I can even actually place a little line on that, because that is going to be some liquidity in there. right? So that was my other idea. Then my last trading idea that I had, this was during the evening session, right? This was during the evening session. I just made a video about that first presented fair value gap. So typically how I trade is I try to look for, you know, a trade in between 9:30 to 11. Sometimes I'll trade during the afternoon, micro, run on liquidity. And then outside of that, I'll wait for 1:30, the first presented fair value gap for the evening session at 1:30, and I'll look for a trade there. So at this point, I wasn't trading my FunderPro account. I was only working on my Tradeify account because I was down like 50 bucks on my Tradeify account, and I wanted to get some profits in there. So I was taking some sales up in here. I took some small losses. I was down about 400, but the trade that allowed me to crawl back was this trade right here. After we hit this first presented fair value gap from May the 28th, and this is why I tell you guys to, when you box up that first presented fair value gap, make sure you extend it all the way to the right. Go in your settings, make sure you got that dotted line in the middle of your first presented fair value gap, and pretty much any box that you use, any gap that you use, any order block, anything that you box up on your chart, make sure you got the midpoint on there as well. So when price came up here, hit the midpoint of this, it had a sharp rejection. I was zooming in right here, and everything right here, these little order blocks is where I was taking my trade. So this order block right here, I took this sell at about the midpoint of this order block. If I box it up, you guys can see what I'm talking about. This green candle right here, right? It didn't hit the midpoint, but I was taking my sales as it came into that, and then I sold, just looking at these little swing lows as liquidity, as like little exit points, because at this point it's a Monday. I'm not really expecting any super big drop. There was a target on the 5-minute. I'll show you guys the target that I really wanted, but you know, they didn't give it to me. It was this little gap right here. I'll box this up for y'all, and I'll make this, let's just make it orange or something. Keep it simple, right? So I was looking for the market to go down and, you know, and touch that gap, but it never did. So that was, and then, yeah, so that was my last trade idea of the day. I just kept selling these little order blocks. As you guys can see, all of these little candles, if y'all know how ICT teaches order blocks, these little 1-minute candles right here, this is an order block. These two right here is an order block. So I was selling those. And then for the last 10 minutes of the day, if you guys don't know about the micro, ICT teaches about the micro. It's essentially the last 10 minutes of every trading hour and the first 10 minutes of every trading hour. There's a micro, right? There's essentially what it is. The market starts to do something, right? It starts to either run on liquidity. Just study it, right? Study it and you will know exactly what I'm talking about, right? So right here, if y'all can see this candle, look at the time right there. It says 1550. So that is 3:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right? So at 3:50, the price came up here, hit about the midpoint of this wick right here. Then it started to have a sharp rejection. And that's when I got in, right? I got in about like at 525 or 515, somewhere in there. And then I sold, like, I think I caught almost the exact bottom down here. And I made about a good 30 points. I made a extra 500 on this trade. And that's how I got my Tradeify account up to about $1,200. So those were my trade executions on the day, you guys. It was a pretty good day. Nothing really too fancy. I just kept it nice and simple. I'm just trying to get my first payout, you guys. So, man, make sure y'all pray for me and send some love in the comments. I would greatly appreciate that. Be sure to like this video as well and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all of the support y'all been giving me. And I'll see y'all in the next one, man. Peace out.